Hello and good evening and welcome to this meeting of SACRE, the Standing Advisory Council on Religious Education for York. Can I just check that everybody can hear me? Right, good. Okay, I'm going to move to the first item of the agenda and then do a formal welcome. So I have apologies for absence from Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Rowley in that order. I don't know if anybody else has given apologies. Angela?
Thank you, Chair. We also have apologies from Kate Bailey, Deborah Evans and John Thompson. And John's been substituted by Maxine Squire from City of York Council.
Right. Okay, fine. Thank you. So we'll note those, please. And we now have Ben Rich in the waiting room. And Ben has joined us, so welcome. So we have, I think, just one new face here tonight and one departing face. And the new face is Councillor Hunter, who joins us for the first time. And I've given her a briefing and warned what a rough time everybody's going to give her. And also, Catherine, I think it's your last meeting with us. I did email you briefly, but thank you for the time and the effort that you've put into joining in our SACRE meetings. And I know I've come in on the very tail end of that, but I know that you're moving out of the area, and I wish you, I think on behalf of everybody here, all the best in your new role, and thank you again.
Thank you very much. Sorry, yes, I'm joined by my dog. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, all contributions are welcome. Okay, and I think Brenda Christensen, from what I hear, is going to be taking on a new role and may move across to another committee. Brenda, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yes, I am. I'm moving on from Naban, but Olivia informs me I might be able to stay on in a different role here, which will be lovely. Okay,
well, I don't quite know whether we need to do any formal things about approving people's memberships of different committees, but we look forward to seeing you in a new role in due course, Brenda. Okay, Olivia, I'm sorry, you emailed me and I've got the change for Brenda in my notes. And we'll need to fill that Group C vacancy. And Brenda will be filling the Group B role that Catherine is departing from. So I think that's all the thanks I need to give at this point. And we'll sort out the Group C vacancy or vacancies over the course of the next couple of months, all being well. Olivia, you wish to say something?
Yeah, Chair, we've got Imam Mirazim with us for the first time this evening as well, as Muslim representative. So I know that our former Muslim representative has moved to Hull, is that correct, Mirazim? So we've got a new Muslim representative here this evening.
So hello, good evening, and I'm very sorry that I didn't welcome you. I normally recognise all the names on the list, but knowing that your predecessor in York had left a couple of months ago, then I hadn't been aware of a replacement. So you're very welcome, and I hope. Do you wish me to call you Imam or Mirzam?
Good afternoon. Thank you, yeah, Councillor. Yeah, Imam Mirazim is fine. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Pleased to meet you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out, Olivia. Okay, so I don't think there are any more apologies for absence to mention, but declarations of interest in anything on the agenda are invited at this point in the meeting. I haven't any, and we don't really have a decision to make. So with that in mind, I think unless somebody wishes to make a declaration of interest, I think we'll move on then to the next item, which is the minutes of previous meetings and that last one is the one held on the 3rd of March. Can I just go through that page by page and check if everybody's happy with the content? So page 1 of the minutes, which is page 1 of your agenda. Anything? Okay. Page 2. Nothing? No. Okay. Page 3. No. And there was a previous mention from Imam Abid in the last item of urgent business, and I think we noted that, and I'm sure it will come up again in the course of the next few months. So if everybody's happy to approve the minutes of the last meeting, I'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay, thank you. And before I do that, can I ask Maxine, did I hear Olivia or somebody say that John was being superseded by Maxine at this point?
I'm here to represent John at this point because he's on holiday this week.
Right. So do we know if he's going to be at our next meeting on the 5th of October?
No, John will have actually left the local authority at that stage. He actually leaves his post at the end of July. Okay.
In which case, perhaps Maxime, you could pass on my thanks, and I think our thanks, everybody's thanks, verbally, but I'll drop him an email to say thank you.
Thank you.
And we will miss John. Okay, so the next item is agenda item 3, which is for Janie to give us a verbal update on the Constitution. And we may have, I said there were no decisions to take, but we may have to decide how we're going to accept or not that Constitution, or whether it's for the City Council to make. But anyway, we may need to decide how we may need to give feedback on it to the City Council before the City Council formally approves it. So Janie, over to you.
So thank you, Chair. How do I start this? So the whole point of the Constitution, so as not to make it boring, is that I'd like to approach this as almost a kind of a member development, or early stages of member development for yourselves here this evening, which is around completely looking at going back to basics about how SACRE is established, how it goes forward, the roles and functions it can have, and what each of the group means as well. Under the NASACRE guidance, it is the legal advisor to SACRE to take responsibility for ensuring that the terms of reference and all the governing documents around SACRE itself are fit for purpose and up to date. You may or may not be aware, as Ian's just mentioned it, that I've also been reviewing the City of York Council's constitution as well, quite comprehensively. And so it was felt to, at this point in time, to undertake a review of SACRE's constitution, and the feedback of this, either from today or after your reflections from today, can be fed into ultimately the council's constitution. Now, the debate around the SACRE constitution and the governance documents which are here today will not delay City of York's work in respect of our remainder of our constitution. This is a key chapter which will ultimately feature within the constitution, but by law, the City of York Council cannot adopt this document and its governance arrangements until SACRE has formally signed it off and formally asked City of York to adopt it within its wider governance framework. My approach to this has been, let's all pretend that we're all absolutely brand new, and let's start afresh off. If you were asked to join one of the committees, what is your role? What do I do? What is the purpose? What does it mean? And I've worked very closely with Olivia, who is a supremely expert trainer in all areas of SACRE functions, to sort of ascertain if that was the right platform to approach this, i.e. plain English, trying to probably use 10 words where 10 words are absolutely appropriate, rather than one word which means 100 things. And For very obvious reasons, I've retained all of the comments in this document, which does make it look twice as long. Now, part of the comments are there for a bit of reasoning of where my information has come from, in case those of you who are more experienced challenge this of, where did you read that, Janie? Where has it just come from? And part of it is feedback that I've received also from Ian and from Olivia and Maxine. Another part of it as well is to sort of answer questions, really, or to provoke a conversation with amongst your particular groups or your committees, as we'll come on to, or a bit of questions really to aid your reflection as you consider this document. So it looks a lot different than on the last occasion when I don't know if members here saw the last terms of reference for the committee, but I have kind of thrown those out with the bathwater and completely started with a blank page. The foundation of all of the documents that I've written here for your consideration this afternoon, and I suspect after this meeting as well, are all based on the NASACRE, so that's the National Governance Documents and Governance Frameworks. And then in conjunction with Olivia and also Maxine as well, we've taken on board experiences and good practice from other SACRE councils and learning from up and down the country as well. So there is an opportunity where possible to kind of put York's stamp on this where it's appropriate to do so, and also to change the meaning of it. But the basic framework has come from national guidance. Now, it is a very long document. I apologise. There's about 25 pages of relatively small type and a lot to take on board. And I appreciate some of you are new and we've all had busy days. But it may just be that this is a discussion topic. The one thing that I'm keen on, supported by Maxine and Ian and Olivia as the vice chair, is that we do want to start having a member development programme going forward. And hopefully this can be part of that document, so that when we go through our member development programme throughout the remainder of this year and our development plan for next year, we've got a good foundation of why we're doing something, what is the purpose of it, how are we held to account, how do we hold others to account, what are the challenges that we can face, and how can we respond to those challenges as well, and how can we really make a difference and have an impact as SACRE for our schools in York, and also listen to all of the faith groups, teachers, learners, you know, very, very highly skilled professionals in trying to get the best out of delivering this agenda across our school base. With the greatest respect, I don't mean to sit here and go through this entire document word for word, because it's quite long. It tends to get really boring. It tends to put people off. And I have to say, after being a sort of written 3 sets of constitutions for 3 councils now, I've learned very quickly it can get very boring, very dull, and people would like, oh, can we have a tea break now? Or I just realize I need to go and do something else that's slightly more exciting than governance documents. But I hope you don't mind the way that I've approached it. I hope you don't mind by the comments being included, which may aid discussion. And I think, Chair, with your indulgence and with everybody's contribution today, it may be that we want to do a discussion topic around it, and it may be that Olivia, from the training perspective as well, might have a particular few comments to make. The comments that I've included in this document are for everybody to consider, because I'm of the approach of that we need to understand everybody's role in all of this, and then come together and understand how we all complement each other or work to strengths or support each other in developing this document. The time frame for this is that obviously we're a virtual meeting today, so we would need to have a physical meeting in order to formally sign it off, or we have a process, if subject to chair and vice chair's views, and obviously Maxine is the advisor from the schools, to decide of we could collate all the responses when everybody's had time to consider this, and there are a few apologies today, and it may be that we delegate to the chair and vice chair in consultation with correspondence to then approve it, so that we don't have, to have an intermediary meeting before October, for example. And I don't think that would happen, but I'm just conscious our next meeting is October. Equally, rather than talking right the way through it. Very, very happy to take any initial comments that you've got now, any very obvious gaps. I don't mean to have been discriminatory in any way if I've missed someone out. As you know, I don't live in York, and I'm still learning sort of York faith groups, York geography, York sort of local language, so it's to speak. So I do apologize if I've inadvertently missed someone out, but I've tried to be as comprehensive as possible, or to offer some thought-provoking questions where possible. So Chair, I'm very happy to take any comments or initial views, or perhaps Olivia may want to, or Maxine may just want to add a few comments on this document.
I think it's just helpful to reiterate what Jenny said about it mirroring NASACRE national guidance. So there is a national association of SACREs who work with DFE to give guidance to SACREs, and so that was the starting point. And I know members will have previously received the NASACRE handbook, which goes into even more detail about the role for members, but just to, I suppose, reassure members that this is based on the national guidance for SACREs.
Yeah, and I'd also like to support Janie's view about, sort of the fact that we're taking it right back to basics, so that it's a training document in itself, to be honest, for any new members that are inducted into SACRE, as well as being a resource for people who are long-standing members of SACRE. So we very much wanted to balance the amount of detail that was there with how it could become a future reference document as well, both for people who want to understand more about the way that SACRE operates, what its purpose is, and also, as I say, for future and existing members to use as a constant point of reference.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful, thank you. I think what we could do at this meeting, without spending a long time on it, which we could, given the fact that it's a constitution, we could decide, for instance, who we believe should be the religious groups which are represented on it, and perhaps the council, because it has to be a council decision, will be able to incorporate that list when it includes and adopts the constitution in its own governing document. Things like whether we have substitutes, whether co-opted members are allowed. It says so in the constitution. I don't think we need to change that, but members may have a different opinion. And if we do co-opt, do they have voting rights? So there are a few comments which I think we might quickly go through. I say quickly, but I don't mean in 5 minutes flat, but certainly reasonably quickly go through and just sort out a preliminary opinion. And if we have to wait until October to have a detailed conversation about it, then we can present that to a council meeting after that for the changes to be made, or for it to adopt the document and the groups listed that we've given. Does that seem reasonable? Everybody happy with that approach? Okay, so shall we start going through those comments fairly briefly? I'm not clear that we need in the SACRE constitution to say how many members are in the group, because those are in the opinion of the authority, will approximately reflect the principal religious traditions. And we have a list of, in the column on the right-hand side, 2, 4, 6, 8, and with possibility of a Hindu and possibly a Buddhist representative there. I don't know if Angela could put this document on her screen, or maybe Olivia.
Or actually Lawrence might, either Angela or Lawrence might be able to.
Right, okay. So I've got hands raised from Olivia and Ben. Are they that's in the order in which I saw them. So while we work out the question of putting it on the screen, Olivia, do you want to make your comment?
Yeah, just for members to understand the context there of that it's the local authority that determines the membership of SACRE as a standing committee, but does so in consultation with SACRE. So the LA usually looks at the diversity of its local area. The census, albeit we know that the last census was some time ago, and we're waiting for the results of the latest census, and then makes a recommendation to the SACRE, and the list there reflects what we have currently. So it would be common practice to outline the different groups that are represented in Committee A, rather than leaving that unpopulated, as it were. And so the comment on the right is just to highlight the members we currently have, including the vacancies in Group A.
Thank you, Olivia. And Ben.
So it did strike me as odd that Hindu didn't appear on.
Sorry, Ben, you broke up very badly there.
Then the main thing, which again I just wanted to try and understand, was whether in theory you can have sort of endless groups represented in Group A, so that we could end up with a SACRE of 30 people, of whom 25 or 20 at least all come from this group, which would just rather unbalance it. And I just wondered whether there was guidance on that, or what we were supposed to do, because it would seem to me you would start with a number of people in each committee and then work out how to do your best to make that reflective of the community as a whole. But
I think, yeah, okay. I think in terms of balance, there's a question about how many votes each committee has, and the voting is by committee. But Maxine wants to comment.
Yeah, the guidance is to actually go with the most significant faith populations within your local area. So that's the normal way, isn't it, Olivia, that it's actually decided what that membership of Group A would be?
Yeah, so the local authority would determine the membership of Group A based on the local area, and to ensure that it's reflective of, which is why every SACRE's Group A will be different, and there also might be diversity of representation within key traditions, and so you may have more than one representative from Judaism or Hinduism or Sikhism, depending on what reflects the local communities. Obviously in York, the membership is as it has been for some time. I don't know when that was last determined, but hence raising Hinduism and a Hindu representative, because we do have a Hindu representative on York Interfaith, and we do have Hinduism in the syllabus, and it would seem appropriate, as you've rightly said, Ben, that there therefore was representation on the committee. But it usually starts with the local authority that makes a decision based on it reflecting the local population.
I think I suppose we tend to be inclusive rather than trying to be too limiting on the numbers. And I guess what I see in front of me in that list is what I would recognise as certainly the principal groupings in this area, along with the Hindu and the Buddhist groups. I'm not aware of particularly significant groupings outside that. Gary, you want to contribute? And then Olivia.
In the past, local authority had taken suggestion from the SACRE, and they had considered it. Not that they agree with it or not, but SACRE actively had been seeking members. I remember that when the Baha'i community offered to represent in the SACRE, I've forgotten the officer's name, she was very surprised that anybody volunteering. So that was one of the difficulties. And because in New York we have a smaller religious community, and some of them are very well divided, not divided, they're sort of in a smaller group like so we have got so many Buddhist groups, which one would represent is an issue. But with Hindus, I'm sure there is a large community of them in New York, and they are all part of one community. So it makes sense to actually actively invite them to become a member.
Okay. I now see we've got the Constitution up on the screen, and I don't know about you, but I find that fairly hard to read. Fortunately, I've got a paper copy in front of me. Okay, Olivia, you were going to comment.
It was just on the point of voting, Councillor Cuthbertson, you mentioned about number of votes. It is written into NASACRE and national guidance that it is 1 vote per group. And I think that's probably an important point to make at this point, because alongside what is written here for each of the groups represented, there is also a clear, for want of a better phrase, job description for members of each group about what the role of each group is, and they are all slightly different. So in the NASACRE handbook, it outlines, for example, if you are a member of Group A, what that means. And I suppose the important point here is it is about the context of religious education and collective worship in schools, and the context of, so Group A and Group B as faith members of the committee are representing their faith groups in the context of religious education and collective worship in schools. Hence, we have an interfaith group in York as well, because their remit and their role is different from the role of SACRE. So it is only 1 vote per group. And so it is about those different members in each group working together and then considering anything that's presented to them in the context of the decisions being made for religious education in schools.
And Penny has just commented on the chat that her group is, pardon me, missing from the list, and we will make sure that that's included.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Despite Ben's question, I mean, I think we've got two candidate groups who've been specified, and Penny, of course, has certainly been around, certainly for the 2 or 3 meetings I've been involved. So I think if we were to proceed on the basis that the list of 8 plus the 3 Hindu, Buddhist and Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Church were included, that would constitute everybody who should at the moment be in Group A. Olivia, you put your hand up. Have you taken it down again?
Yes, apologies, Chair. I hadn't lowered it from the last time. Sorry.
All right, a legacy hand. Okay, pardon me. So on the basis that that seems like a starter, we could put that down on our list of things to present to City of York. The next thing is a group of persons representing the Church of England. This is Group B, and it seems we need to specify how many members of that group there are. We can't do that, I think, until we've settled Brenda's situation, although I think Olivia would anyway want to move to Group B after the change that to her working arrangements, which will occur after this meeting. So again, we have at the present minute 3 in that group with 1 vacancy. It looks as if we would still have 3, but with 1 vacancy, unless somebody volunteered to fill that vacancy. Anybody got any comments on that?
Chair, it's the Diocesan Board of Education that nominates to those positions for Group B, because it's representing the Church of England. So it's the Board of Education that nominates, in the same way that for each of the groups there are organisations or groups that would nominate members to the groups. So it's really a decision for the local authority as to how many places there are, and then the Board of Education would find suitable members to fill those places.
Okay. So I suppose I should ask, what happens with the potentially 11 members that we've got in Group A? Do their organisations nominate them?
Yes. Chair,
Okay.
because we'd approach those organisations, because we don't know who the best person is or who wants to actually participate on this committee. So I think with the vast majority of these, just like it is in-house with the council, it is go and seek nominations and expressions of interest, essentially, and we would take it from there. I think what the local authority's role is quite small at this point. It is just setting the broad parameters.
Okay.
And there will be opportunity to review this. This is the first time that members have seen this. So we're not looking for categoric set in stone answers now. This is about just having some ideas and awareness raising about the sort of task ahead that we need to do.
Okay. Right. Thank you. I think I understand that. Group C on page 6 of your document. There are several comments there.
Yeah. So this is representing the teaching community. Yeah. So it's about the the sort of numbers and making sure that we have a really broad spectrum of teachers as well. It's not all resting on one person's shoulders, because obviously there are a number of schools across York. So it is just making sure, and in discussions with Maxine as well, around making sure that all schools feel included, that they may have someone on their staff base who can put forward as well. And so it's, as the comments say as we're here, that we just need to make sure that we have the broadest spectrum possible.
Yeah, I see one of the comments says up to 5.
It's a suggestion of up to 5. Yes, it's a suggestion. I think it's back to one of Ben's comments of we could have 20. But it is a suggestion that we have up to 5. But again, for the purposes of this discussion today, it's a suggestion.
Okay. Okay, maybe we'll need to put that perhaps to a fuller meeting of this body. Can I refer you to the first comment, which suggests asking for a representative from York Schools and Academies Board? And there's a further comment there. Somebody thinks it would be helpful to have an ITT rep. ITT? Independent, something, teachers of theology?
Initial teacher training or initial teacher education.
Oh, sorry, I should have known that, shouldn't I? Right. When you say initial teacher training, you mean somebody who delivers ITT?
Yes.
Yeah, we have we do have local, both through teaching schools and through the universities, opportunities to train specifically in religious education, and it's quite common where that exists for a SACRE to either include as a co-opted member or as part of Group C, somebody with connections to initial teacher training, because of the relationship between that and the work that happens in schools with RE.
Okay. So the question about that will be how many, and should there be one from YSAB and or one from an ITT provider? Okay. Group D as it stands.
Yes. So Group
Sorry,
D.
I've got my
I'm
hand.
sorry. Beg your pardon, Ben. I'm sorry.
Sorry. It strikes me that it's more important, or as important here, to have representation from the different types of schools as it is anywhere else. And the groups of schools I'd want to see represented would be community schools, faith schools, and academy schools, both faith-led and non-faith-led, as well as independent schools. And that's the more important sort of, well, that's every bit as important as having all the faiths represented, is having the schools with the different perspectives.
Yeah.
I don't quite understand, sorry, in this process, who gets to say that that's that we're looking for representation from those different sectors.
It's national guidance, and the legal framework is that the local authority determines the membership of SACRE, but it's common practice for the local authority to consult with SACRE as part of that process. But ultimately, legally, it is the local authority that determines the membership of SACRE. But part of this process is to enable SACRE members to contribute to the conversation that will lead to those final decisions that a local authority makes.
I realise the local authority may have a different view, but given the majority of children in this city now attend academy schools or private schools, having a single representative as a sort of to tick the box doesn't do it. They should, as with faith communities, they should surely seek to reflect the makeup of the schools that we have in the city.
And we can take that feedback back.
Yeah, definitely.
Part of this as well is that we also need the nominees. Yes. So if we have this broad response from SACRE members today, then the task is also trying to encourage people to join as well. So it may be our greatest desire to have the widest breadth of reflection across the city, but we do actually need the nominees. So you know, that's part of this discussion today, is to try and ascertain the views, because when we know how far we need to go in terms of trying to get the interest in joining SACRE.
That's a very fair comment, although I would say that way you end up with the people who are easiest to find, which is almost certainly the local authority schools. So what I'm asking is that we make a particular effort is made to ensure recruitment from the harder to reach schools.
I think I'm not, from my perspective, is the director of governance. I don't think that's kind of quite fair, because the local authority has, to my experience, strong links with all schools, and has the mature conversation with all schools and the ability to have that. So I don't think that City of York Council per se, the authority, would be very blinkered in just focusing on York schools. And I certainly would not advocate that as part of my advice. As the chief legal advisor to the city, it would be very much take the broader spectrum, because that is currently developing as the wish of members of SACRE this afternoon.
And certainly the partnership we have with schools is an inclusive partnership. All schools are represented within the York Schools and Academies Board. And also, you know, sort of we do have regular communication with the independent schools in the city.
Okay. Yes, I certainly think, I know that YSAB is developing its ability to represent a broad spectrum of schools, both maintained and academies. I think the independent schools are the missing link there, because there are faith schools in the YSAB coverage, but I think it's a good point. We no doubt will need to come back on that.
Chair, I think Olivia, yeah.
Sorry, Chair. I think it's also helpful to understand in terms of Group C that the remit of SACRE and the role that SACRE has, a part of that is monitoring standards in all schools, whether maintained or academy, that are publicly funded. But alongside that, it's determining a locally agreed syllabus, which maintained schools which are voluntary controlled or community must follow, and academies then have choice about following. So in terms of independent schools, there certainly is sometimes in SACRE's representation, but we just need to be mindful that they don't come under the remit of SACRE in terms of determining curriculum. I think in York, we are very well placed in terms of that relationship with academies and maintained schools. Particularly as a small local authority, there is a relationship with the academies, and you don't often see any difference in the communication about delivering the agreed syllabus between academies and maintained schools. So certainly in terms of the launch of the agreed syllabus, there was representation right across, and the majority of academies in the city, I wouldn't want to say all without double checking the figures, but the majority of academies do choose to follow the York locally agreed syllabus. And so in that sense, I think in terms of representation, I think York is a really great example of where a SACRE can engage with all types of schools and support a high quality curriculum across them. Hence the recommendation made in there about having representations from primary, secondary, maintained and academy to enable that cross section, particularly for those ongoing conversations about developing the curriculum ongoing.
Okay, I think I've got a note of that. I'll pick up that point further with certainly the Vice Chair, Janie, and with Maxine as well. Lastly, Group D, there's a comment about possibly including school governors, a school governor representative. I know that political balance will need to be maintained. Certainly, whether we should, as an alternative, appoint representatives such as the Governors Association. I'm not clear on that, and whether governors would wish to extend their.
So Chair, this is put in because I just wanted to make it very clear to members of SACRE that Group D does not have to be made up by elected members. There can be the provision for the City of York Council to say we also want representation from the School Governor Forum as well. And that just demonstrates the broadness of the membership. So whilst we've just done our own health check and challenge on all the other groups as well, I wanted to make sure that Group D, as the City of York group, was also held to that same challenge. And obviously it's still up to City of York Council of what it would wish to do, but I thought it was important to just raise the question. Okay. So there wasn't just the assumption it had to be elected members. It could be a broader representation within this group.
Okay. I think we need
to take that bit back to the City of York Council, because that is for the council to determine.
Yeah, okay. I think given the fact that we've had, because of the committee structure, we've had problems with quoracy from time to time. Certainly I'm aware of it in the last 12 months. I would hope we can make sure that we've got people who are interested, rather than being easy to find, are actually interested in making a continuing contribution. I wouldn't necessarily object to a governors forum, but I would like to know that it was going to be a kind of a workable representative group. I don't know what anybody else feels about that.
I think given the focus of SACRE is religious education, it's not a bad thing to have a representative of school governance within SACRE, because obviously they're also very important to the strategic leadership structure of schools, and they can advocate around the importance of religious education as part of the school curriculum.
Okay.
So it is well worth considering.
Right. I don't want you to think I'm going to go through all 20 odd pages of this, but I just thought it might be useful just to get the kind of basics in the main body of the Constitution, which goes on for another 4 pages, I think, sorted out if we could. And then that means then that at a subsequent meeting, we can put the other points to other members at a later date. Does everybody think that's okay? I mean, yeah. Okay.
Janie, could I just check the process in terms of the timeline for recommending adoption?
Yeah, so the City of York Council's constitution has got its own timeline, so it's coming in stages over the remainder of this year, and so this will fit into one of those stages. So as and when we receive a formal recommendation from SACRE, it will fit into one of those implementation stages, because it needs to link in with Audit and Governance Committee to form part of the wider constitution. So there's nearly every 6 weeks a meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee, and every 6 weeks there is a meeting of full council. So yeah, it will be, once we've got the final determination from SACRE, it will fit in quite seamlessly during the course of this year. So and fits with the meeting programs of SACRE. So you know, it's not going to be an outlier, for example.
Right, great, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's why it's kind of encouraging reflection on this document after today, and then the best mechanism of feeding back, because you know, some people are completely new to this and new to today's meeting as well. So it is about offering a period of reflection. Hence we've left the comments there so that everybody can feel confident to contribute to that kind of formulation of this document.
Okay, well, let's then move on to page 7, the term of office, which first item 2, where are the comments? The ones on the term. I think it's about whether substitutes should be allowed or not.
Yeah, as you can see from the comments, Chair, there's quite a debate on this, and it's quite rare. So it is, and it would get quite difficult, because if we've got quite a substantial agenda and it's about ensuring there's, you know, consistency of representation, so substitutes could get quite difficult and sort of cause quite a few challenges. So I think you'll see our comments there that on balance it's not to have substitutes. It is simple. If you can't attend, please send your apologies. And we're back to the voting system of, you know, each committee gets 1 vote. So the sort of strong necessity for substitutes, like if everybody had their own standalone vote, is not necessarily the same.
Well, I think the question of arranging substitutes might generate, I think, probably more problems.
Yes.
Without something very clear. And given the kind of relatively informal nature of some of the recommendations to a point, it might actually generate more problems than it solves. Would people feel very strongly about allowing substitutes then? Any views on that?
Do we take silence as no view, or you want to reflect and come back after you've spoken to your respective denomination?
Well, I think nobody said strongly that they feel substitutes should be allowed. Is that an agreed thought? Everybody happy with that approach? Or do we wish to stick out for something else?
I can certainly take that forward. So I think Penny wants to say something, Chair.
Penny, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if there are, if we don't allow substitutes, are we then saying that a group is then removed, for example, from SACRE?
No.
No. Okay.
No, so you remain part of SACRE until you either resign or you come to the end of your term of office, or you simply move, you move away, whatever it is, or you choose for whatever reason that you don't want to be part of this anymore, or your denomination, who you represent, has a discussion with you about an alternative representation, for example. So no, it's very much that once you're appointed, you would stay. And what we've added here is that there'll be, for sake of clarity, is a 4-year term, so that people coming into entering SACRE would know the kind of commitment and expectation. And it's quite common now to have an identifiable term of reference as well, so that you're not here for like a time immemorial period, or you're just here for one meeting. So it's just about putting clarity in terms of commitment. We've put a 4-year term of office. That's quite common. City of York Council's elections are 4 yearly, and it also, 4 years allows work to be done, progress to be monitored, lessons to be learned, feedback to be evaluated. So it's a sufficient time period, in my experience, that it allows, the one of everything, to experience one of everything in what we need to do. So that's what we've put on. But no, the substitution doesn't mean that you can't come back. Quite the opposite, actually. It just means that it gives you some freedom of, it's okay to send your apologies, but you don't have the hassle of trying to find someone else to represent you for one meeting if you've got, for example, caring responsibilities or the dentist appointment or something unexpected.
Okay.
Okay, so
that's fine.
If everybody's happy, we'll work on those substitutes. Comment below that. Do we want to have a process for inviting expressions of interest from prospective members of SACRE?
I think that's possibly, Chair, something that perhaps Maxine and I, working with yourself and Olivia, and just need to look at behind the scenes, because it's linked with the job description, it's linked with the communication factor that we have with the broader SACRE, and it's also conversations that I would imagine that Maxine has with the various faith groups, the teaching representatives. So that might be something that behind the scenes is probably more a procedural issue that we need to do. And not that we need to put it in here, but that's one of the comments where it just causes us, with the background information, the background responsibilities, just to have on our to-do list.
Yep. Okay. I'd be more than happy with that. Does anybody else feel that it's a burning issue that needs to be decided at the moment? Nope, it's gone quiet.
Just to say, Chair, I think this all fits in with that the bit that sits behind any constitution in terms of induction and understanding our role as members. And so the NASACRE handbook has in great detail outlines for each of the groups on SACRE what our roles and responsibilities are. And so in terms of length of terms of office and those sorts of things, it's to enable people to not feel that they have to stay on forever, but equally it doesn't preclude people staying on for more than 4 years if they're the right person to represent their community and fit that job description for SACRE, because it's about enabling SACRE membership to be as strong as it can be, and for the right people to be representing the different groups so that our schools get the best I suppose offer in terms of religious education in schools. So I think some of those things like expressions of interest are about supporting SACRE to know that the right people are sitting on the committee that can champion RE and collective worship in schools, and that those joining a committee know what they're signing up to and understand what the remit of SACRE is and feel supported in order to do that well. Penny, we'll make sure that it's resent. It should be given to you when you join as a member of SACRE. I know members have the username and password to access all the NASACRE stuff online, but we will make sure it is sent again so that you have it.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, I'll move on to the question of co-options. SACRE does have a right to co-opt to its non-voting membership. So the question is, do co-opted members have voting rights? And the comment from Olivia below it is, it's not common for cooperative members to have voting rights.
Absolutely, and
yeah.
again, this is part of the conversation that we have, is just that check and balance. There is one SACRE in the south of the country, and they do have, in their terms of reference, when I was doing the research, they do give everybody a voting right, so co-opteds a voting right, so hence the challenge here. But obviously we're wanting to stick to the NASACRE handbook and close to the principal guidance, and so this kind of demonstrates to the SACRE members that we have thought about everything and used learning. And I think we came down when writing this that it would be that co-opted members, we stick with the writing that's here, which is that they don't have a voting right.
Yep, fine, okay. So that's pretty standard practice across the country. In which case, I assume we proceed without co-optees having voting rights. Next item is on page 8 of your agenda, item 5.1. SACRE shall by election each year determine the chair and vice chair. The question, the comment above that was from me because I wasn't sure of the arrangements and thought I ought to question it. And the next one.
So, Chair, if I can just explain the theory behind this.
Yep.
So if we agree that everybody will sit on SACRE for a 4-year period, then we also need to have a consistent approach around the election of our chair and vice chair.
Right,
so
okay.
For consistency of practice, do we have a chair and vice chair elected on an annual basis, for example, at our first meeting of the new year, or do we follow through with the 4 years? So you will see in the commentary here would sort of come to some conclusion that if the chair is going to be from committee group D, you can only sit for 4 years anyway, because you all go back to election, as elected members go back to election every 4 years. So this was just demonstrating the sort of a debate we had, and there is a need for whatever we determine with the 4 years sort of consistency of approach of chair and vice chair. And there's obviously implications for the different groups. So it's quite lengthy, but people might want to just reflect on this for a while.
Okay. So shall we leave that we'll discuss that when everybody's present?
I think this is, Chair, my particular opinion is that this is quite crucial for everybody to have the role and to make an informed, reflective response on this. And what we've done is shown you our debate process in preparing a draft for consideration today. So I think we definitely welcome some thoughts, because we certainly don't want to sort of, we want to have the consensus and unanimous opinion about chairing and vice chairing, so going forward. So I'm quite happy to take views following reflection.
Chair, I think it's useful because of the detail that we've left in terms of the comments, that actually people are able to take the document away, and as Janie said, after a period of reflection, then gather in some thoughts rather than go through it minutely today.
Yeah, fine. Okay, well, we have two more pages to go at, and we've spent 40 minutes on this. I don't know whether there's time to deal with everything. I don't want to cut it short, but I thought that if we were able to consider the kind of main body of the Constitution, it would be helpful.
Chair, the only thing that I just want to raise, because I do think that the remainder of this does take quite a lot of reading and quite a lot of discussion, and we've got some new members here today as well, and this is kind of quite a painful introduction to SACRE if you're not used to expecting to talk about a constitution, and I do apologise to those of you who are new today. I am so sorry. The only one that I do think just needs some discussion is about paragraph 6.5, which is where the voting is tied. there is, again, back to the research, there is one SACRE that is in the south of the country where the chair has a casting vote. In the City of York Council, at full council, if there is a tied vote, the Lord Mayor of the city has a casting vote. And in certain circumstances as well, there is a different voting arrangement that comes in. The alternative is if there is a tied vote with all the committees, that the decision is not made and it's passed over to a future meeting. So I think if I just draw members' attention to that, don't expect to get a response here today, because this is a particular area that requires reflection, because ideally we'd want to have a unanimous vote going forward, not quite a debate and quite sort of upset within the group. So I just want to draw members' attention really to the other sort of potentially contentious issue, which is paragraph 6.5, where voting is tied amongst the groups. And I think I'll just leave my comment there, and perhaps Olivia or Maxine might have a comment as well. But that's the only other area that I'd want to draw attention to.
Yeah, just to say, Janie, when I had previous contacts with SACRE many years ago, they did apply that principle that the chair had the casting vote.
And I mean, it's not common for SACRE constitutions to have that in, and the rationale for not having it in is because the chair is a member of one of the 4 groups, and each group has a single vote. And so the reason why many SACREs don't include the chair casting a deciding vote is it could be viewed that the chair is then going with the decision that the group that they sit within has gone with, and therefore it could be viewed to not be a decision that is appropriate for all of SACRE. And that's why many SACREs have a vice chair that's in a different group from the chair to avoid that bias, but also move to a non-vote. Now, this is probably worth saying that it's rare that this happens, because there's very few things that go to the single group votes. It's usually voting in the annual reports, voting in the chair and vice chair, and very occasionally there might be another decision apart from the syllabus decisions every 5 years. But that's why many SACREs choose to move to a non-vote recorded and allow more time for discussion, so that each group within SACRE feels that their particular representation is heard and a decision is made equitably in that way.
Okay, well, we'll leave that to people to reflect on and discuss that again at our next meeting, I think. Okay, well, given the fact that time's moved on, perhaps we can, everybody having had a bit of an introduction to the kind of issues that are involved, if people could reflect on it, please, and we will have a fuller discussion at the next meeting, perhaps gather reflections before the meeting, and then have a kind of a forum that allows us to have a discussion and a decision as to what to put to City of York Council to adopt. So thank you for your work on that, Janie. Let's move on then from that, having got a tentative agreement on several of those points, to the next item on the agenda, which is monitoring of standards. I don't know who wishes to speak on this. Maxine, have you got something to say on this, or maybe John?
Well, yeah, obviously as part of the annual report, there's a requirement to monitor standards in terms of the outcomes of our re-education in the local area. It is an area as well where we have less oversight in terms of the standard of religious education that's delivered, because we don't actively at the moment go into schools and monitor it, but we do obviously keep an overview of what's coming out from Ofsted reports. And it's really, I suppose, it's how we want to handle this particular aspect of SACRE's work in the future. Olivia, I don't know whether you want to add anything.
Yeah, so in a previous SACRE meeting, we approved a questionnaire for primary and for secondary schools with key questions that would enable SACRE to gather the information it needs to have its oversight in terms of monitoring and to complete what DFE is requiring in the new annual report structure. So I think at this meeting, it was just about some clarity about when those would be sent out to schools so that SACRE could receive the information back in time to report it through the annual report.
Okay, so I apologise because I haven't had that conversation and update from John, who was probably at the last meeting when that was discussed. And yeah, I think it feels appropriate because we're at that stage in the year and we've had a very disrupted year, that we'd get those out at the start of the new school year. That feels more appropriate, I think, for our schools and school leaders at the moment, because obviously the main, and I'm sure Brenda will say that it is still very, very busy at the moment, just managing the impact of the pandemic.
So I think the deadline, the meeting of the SACRE is on the 5th of October, and that's when the draft of the annual report would come in. So it might be a quick turnaround for schools, but it would be then the analysis, so I can't say that word, the analysis of the questionnaires coming to that 5th of October SACRE meeting in order to meet that.
And again, I think it's appropriate to have quite a sharp deadline on them, because the longer you leave it, you don't get any more responses. You probably as well, sort of putting a maximum of a week's turnaround on it, to be honest. Brenda, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts from your view as the schools rep.
Yeah, I think sending it out now would might well be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Yeah, no, I think first couple of weeks in September, people might be a bit more clear, hopefully.
Right, in which case we'll agree not to send it out before the end of term, but agree to send it out at the beginning of the next term. Okay, thank you. So the Agreed Syllabus launch, which took place, was it May, Olivia? I think it was.
It was, yeah, 21st of May.
Yeah, and it went well. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there for longer than the morning, but it did seem to go down well. I'm sure Olivia may want to comment. I don't know if Brenda was there either.
I was there for some of it. I sent one of my teachers and she came back full of ideas and much enthusiasm at the end of the day, which was lovely.
Good.
I do have an update for members, Chair, just so we can round off the review of the Agreed Syllabus and just report on that, if that's possible, just so that members are aware of school attendance and the context of the day and the impact of it going forward. So I'm really pleased to report that there was excellent attendance at the launch. I think that it testament to some of the things that Maxine was saying earlier about how the schools worked really well together and collegiately in City of York, and that was really demonstrated through the day. A real cross-section of schools, both maintained and academy, primary and secondary, attended the full day, and particularly given the situation that we're in at the moment and the challenges that schools are facing, the fact that 36 out of our 43 primaries and 5 of our 6 secondary schools attended the day, I think shows that they were committed to looking at the syllabus and implementing it in their schools. The launch day, I was very grateful to Penny and Dariush who joined and spoke to schools and schools were really pleased to hear from SACRE members, and also how York Interfaith Group can support schools going forward with visits and visitors. So thank you again. Just to say thank you publicly again, Penny and Darius, because it was really valued, and really grateful for your contributions on the day. And thank you again also to members who contributed to the documents that brought the syllabus alive and gave it a local flavour. We're really grateful for all your contributions to that as well. The day focused on all schools together in the morning, focused on the big picture of planning and curriculum design linked with Ofsted. And then in the afternoon, split into primary and secondary, and looking at more detail at the particular curriculum concerns for primary and secondary schools. And there's a wealth of resources that schools have access to online, and schools were provided with all of the materials they needed to disseminate that back in their schools. And I'm pleased to say that schools are already engaging with it, despite all the challenges this term and our expectation that they might park it until at least September. There has been a lot of conversation with RE leads already wanting to reflect on their current curriculum. And as we know, we made the changes manageable. We didn't radically change the syllabus, but particularly with the Ofsted research report and other national conversations about RE, teachers seem really engaged in thinking about and reflecting on their curriculum. So we may need to consider some catch up for those schools that didn't attend in the autumn term. And certainly the feedback from teachers is that they would like more support on subject knowledge and assessment. It's always on the list going forward in terms of supporting them in implementing the syllabus. But I think we can quite formally report that it was a successful day and very well received by teachers right across the city. So just my thank you as I come to the end of supporting SACRE with that hat on. Thank you to all of you for your support and contributions. It's been a pleasure working with you on it this year, so thank you.
Good, thank you. I don't know if Penny and Darius want to say anything. I thought your contributions were well received.
It has been very good sessions, and I appreciated all the efforts that have been put into it, and the presentations were very good. There was only one point that one of the teachers raised, which I was a bit surprised that they didn't seem to have the information that they could ask faith communities contribution if they need someone to go into the schools. And I think that needs to be a bit more emphasized to the teachers. They have that option to ask the faith communities.
Just to say, Darius, that the information from York Interfaith that I worked with Penny on was sent to all of the schools after the day. So they have the York Interfaith email address and the list of possible visits and visitors. So that should be addressed as a result of the launch.
Thank you.
And just to add to that, we have had 3 separate inquiries from schools directly into York Interfaith, asking how we as a group can support and help them with either visits or whether they be in real life or whether they be virtual or however, and exploring ways of working with schools in order to help them. So we have had some response from some teachers who are interested, and hopefully the agenda item is also a follow-up to supporting and helping that when we get to that agenda item with Interfaith.
Great. Imam, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just on that point, very good, important point. Mosques, we have restarted our school visits, our school tours, and also we have restarted our visit the school for the imams. So myself, I will be visiting some of the primary and secondary schools in the coming weeks and months, hopefully. So just on that note, thank you.
It's good to hear that. Okay. Any further comment from anybody? I'm afraid I was focused very much on my last radiotherapy session, which was that afternoon. So the events of the morning have fallen off the back of my head in terms of memory, I'm afraid. So apologise for not having as much detail, but it certainly was a warm atmosphere, I thought. It felt as if it was going well. Okay, so Penny, over to you for item 6. York Interfaith support. Will you be speaking on this, or will Dariush be joining you?
I'm speaking on that. That's my kind of lead responsibility at Interfaith. Really, it was further to working with Olivia and seeing how we could support the launch of the RE curriculum, as you've just heard, and a desire on the part of York Interfaith to do something constructive and to find ways of engaging with schools, which is something as a group we probably struggled a little bit with. However, working with and through SACRE will enable us to access all the schools in York. And so one of the things that we discussed and we wanted to do last year, but the pandemic prevented us, was to have some kind of a competition with schools to engage children in actively understanding, learning, engaging with faiths. And we have some ideas. One of the ideas this year is that we were going to do sort of stories and parables from different faiths. And one of the suggestions this year was perhaps to do about trees or seeds that appear in faiths, across the faith, stories of trees and growing, and to kind of look at that, or look at a post-pandemic kind of situation with faith and somehow engage in a competition, whether that be poetry, whether that be prose, whether, the details of which we haven't actually set. But the suggestion is that perhaps we can work with SACRE and with Olivia as an interfaith group, and I would be the main connection there to engage with this in school. So perhaps a launch in September after the summer holidays, and to culminate in Interfaith Week, which is the 14th of November. It starts to the 21st. So in discussion with my vice chair at York Interfaith, she suggested that maybe we could incorporate some kind of prize giving or something in the final we tend to have a closing service after the activities of the week of Interfaith Week, so that maybe we could incorporate something in there and give some small prizes. They wouldn't be huge, but they would be small, and recognise contributions, and have judges, and make it an engagement of faith, and them working on things to engage faith as part of their curriculum. So we take Olivia's steer and expert knowledge input into how that would best work. So that's a suggestion that we have going forward, that we'd like to work with SACRE in that particular area and take that forward.
Sorry, I'm here again. Thank you for that, Penny. I don't know if you're aware that NASACRE, the National Association of Sacres, has got access to a certain amount of funding through a charitable trust, I think it is. And I will talk about it in a minute, but there is a certain amount of money available to support inventive and original projects. So I don't know if you want the information. I could, either Olivia or I could probably let you have that, about the projects that were put forward. But you may want perhaps to think about making an application.
Okay, lovely. No, I wasn't aware, so that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, fine. Okay, great. Any further comments on Penny's contribution about York Interfaith there? Nope. Okay, in which case, I don't know whether, I think October gives us time to think about any individual contributions that members might want to make to Interfaith Week, because we're meeting at the beginning of October, so it will be about 6 weeks later. So we can think about it at the next meeting, perhaps. Okay. I can give you a limited amount of feedback from the NASACRE conference, which was the first one. It was on the 24th of May, so that was the Monday after the Agreed Syllabus launch. And again, I had a hospital appointment in the afternoon, so I was only able to attend for the morning. It was their first time on Zoom, which caused a few organizational problems in that they had allocated breakout rooms to individual attendees before the meeting. And when it came to the point that the breakout sessions were being held, they tried to allocate them to members to the pre-allocated room, and it didn't work. And the result was that I had 2 bites at the cherry for the breakout group that I wanted to go to, which was one of the groups that had competed for a prize of cash support through this charitable trust that I mentioned earlier on, and it was called the Wire Award, WYRE, and it was about religious education, but it was about implementing it through schools in the community. And it didn't have to be any particular faith, it was about how a school could tackle it. And so you had several schools taking part in this from that particular area of the country. And it was quite an interesting project. I managed to get the full view of the breakout session the second time round, because the first time was quite chaotic. I must say that the organisers handled the chaos with commitment and with cheerfulness. And it is important when something like that happens not to be put off. Before that first breakout session, there had been a contribution from Professor Diane. Olivia's going to give me the name in a moment.
Professor Denise Cush from Bath Spa University.
That's right. And she talked about various sources of authority on which teaching could be planned and based. And these were a whole range of authorities, from the original, if you like, authoritarian scripts that different religions had, ranging through learned contributions throughout the ages and various forms of discipleships and religious organization giving rise to authoritative scriptures and or books, and then ranging to academic work and to teaching and to the role of religious leaders in the community. And it was quite a different kind of topic. I'd expected it to be quite dry, but she made it very interesting, and she had a very, not chatty, but very warm style of presentation, which made it even easier to be in on. So for the 2.5 things that I was present at, I very much enjoyed them. The welcome speech was interesting too. And at lunchtime, I left, unfortunately. I don't know if Olivia wants to comment on the afternoon session and the second speaker, who was Professor QA.
Dr. Richard Quay, who's the HMI from Ofsted for religious education. Probably the most helpful thing, I think, for members is that NASACRE has sent around a summary of the day that outlines the different themes and conversations. And I know members have access to the NASACRE website, so a lot of the presentations are available on there. So perhaps, Chair, if we circulate that summary and link to the presentations, then members could look at the different aspects that might be of particular interest to them after the meeting.
Okay, I don't know if anybody else went to the NASACRE conference. No, it looks like it was the two of us then, Olivia. And that's as much feedback as I can give you. And thank you, Olivia, for your addition to that. Okay, I don't know who's going to speak to the Ofsted research report. Is it Olivia or Maxine, perhaps?
Olivia?
Yes, Chair. So I've produced a paper for members as a summary of the Ofsted research report. I'm not going to read through the paper. I know people have received it, but just to highlight that Ofsted are currently releasing a series of research reports on various subjects in the curriculum, and religious education was one of the first reports to be released. It's authored by Dr. Richard Quay, who's the HMI for RE, and will be a significant document for us as SACRE members, because it sets out some clear parameters of what highly effective RE looks like in all settings. It's important to say that within the report, it makes it very clear the legal framework for RE, but also that when Ofsted visit a school and look at RE, they're looking at the contextualised curriculum. So they're looking at how, for example, a York school takes their legal document, the Agreed Syllabus, and then shapes a curriculum that's bespoke for their pupils in their context. And so this document, I think, will be particularly important in terms of shaping training and support for senior leaders, governors and subject leaders. There's been much conversation nationally and through various national networks that our teachers might tap into, and local networks are also starting to look at this. So it's there for members to consider. I'm happy to take any questions, but certainly in the launch event for the Agreed Syllabus, we did relate our conversations about curriculum design to the language in this report and to the language of intent, implementation and impact. So our teachers through the launch day have already heard some of the key messages from this report and reflected on how the syllabus can support them in terms of curriculum. But of course, there will be some work for us as SACRE to do over the next 5 years in continuing to support schools. And in the next 18 months, there will be a further support report from Ofsted that will be a summary of the deep dives that have taken place into RE over the next 18 months to then Ofsted to relay their findings when they've gone into schools and seen RE in practice. So again, that'll be another report that as SACRE will be important for us to pay attention to. But happy to take any questions, but I've provided some links to the full report as well as the summary.
Okay, well, I'll certainly manage to get a look at it. And I think it sounds as if it will have some bearing on the teaching practice and scope of teaching in the coming academic year. So it will be interesting to get feedback on that as the year progresses. Okay, so if no more questions, I'll then move on to item 9, which is any correspondence on complaints or on requests for determinations. I'm not aware of any. I don't know if you are, Maxine? No. Okay. I know it's a fairly rare feature that we.
Yeah, it is relatively rare. It's not, it's not impossible that we do, but no, there isn't anything that's come through.
Yeah. Okay. Item 10, urgent business. Nobody has asked to have any item of urgent business included in the agenda, and I haven't got anything. So if members would like to note the next meeting dates, the next one being the 5th of October, make sure they're in your diary. I look forward to seeing you then and to picking up our conversation about the proposed constitution and to how we might present it to City of York for adoption in due course. So thank you everybody for your attendance. Catherine's gone. I'll drop her a thank you email later. I'll also write to John. And Brenda, good luck in your new role. Wherever that may be, I'll drop you a line and talk to you about it later. And Maxine, good luck in your new role too. And we look forward to having your support. And Olivia, thank you for the support you've given us over the years, of which I've only enjoyed the last few months, but it's been brilliant so far for me. Thank you from everybody else. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everybody.